Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm thrilled to have Justin Chen here. He's the co founder of PickFu. It's a customer research platform companies can use and people just like you to get fast, reliable feedback from real people. Publishers, self published authors can use PickFu to test their book titles, covers, and even their book concepts before they write it. What's great is Justin is here to share about this, but he's electrical engineering degree and computer science from UC Berkeley and MS engineering management from Santa Clara University. He's a serial entrepreneur of 17 years and lives in Los Angeles with his wife and his two children. And I'm thrilled to have him here. And I know he's going to give you lots of value. Justin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. It's really great when I always hear these amazing people who develop some sort of cool software or something or program. It's like their journey to get here. I had the CEO founder of Bonjoro on here once, and it's always so great. So before we dive into this amazing platform, which I actually have used PickFu like maybe 8 years ago, so it's
Cool.
probably changed quite a bit. But tell us, how did you decide this is the thing you're going to do as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't something we decided to do. So my co-founder and I, let's see, let's go back even further. We both went to Berkeley together. We did computer science. We graduated during the dot-com bust. So I went to HP, he went to Microsoft, kind of fled to the big companies.
Yeah.
Got sick of that after a few years. So we're like, let's do something together. So we started a business. It was a restaurant review menu aggregator,
Hmm.
competing with Yelp and City Search. And we wanted to do this entrepreneurial self-funded journey, like learning things and all that kind of stuff. And so we did that, and that business like is still running and did well for us. But along the way, we were rebranding and redesigning that website. So we were in the middle of this redesign, and we had these two different design concepts from our designer, and we couldn't decide between the two of us. So and we had our friends and family had gotten sick of giving feedback, because as any entrepreneur knows, like, you start asking them, and then they're excited for you in the beginning, but then they're just like, oh, whatever, like whatever you think is best, and this is not really helpful, and they're not really
Yeah.
your target audience anyways.
Yeah.
um, so the whole trend around getting out of your office and like going to coffee shops was kind of like the thing, like lean validation. And so we're engineers. We didn't want to do that. So let's build a solution where we can sit at home and gather feedback. And that's where PickFu came from. So we had a need to get design feedback. We built this solution over a Thanksgiving. Over a Thanksgiving long weekend. And yeah, we put it out there, and we thought other entrepreneurs could benefit from it. We kind of left it there on the side for quite a while as we continued building the other business, and slowly iterated on it based off customer feedback, and it's turned into our main thing now,
Yeah.
and it's continuing to grow, and the team is growing, and it's super exciting.
That's amazing. Yeah, you know what's great about I love that. That's very similar to how the CEO of Bonjoro said, like, no, we had this problem and we needed to solve our own problem. So this is how
Yep.
it came about. And I think that is a lot of the way a lot of this stuff happens. I think people misunderstand like the
Yeah.
journey of any of this stuff. Well, if you're an author or you're thinking about writing a book, this is a big dilemma, especially if you're self-published. Let me tell you, some of the self-published authors that we've helped publish their books, because we have our own publishing
Hmm.
imprint, but they think they're doing a piece of art. I'm like, no, it's not art. It's not something you blow up and hang on your wall. It doesn't represent your brand. It is a product called a book, and you want people to buy it and read it.
Hmm.
It's not. It doesn't necessarily supposed to look like your website, but people get obsessed with this idea. And what's great about your platform, and you can tell us a little bit more how it works, is look, you got to test the people who are actually going to buy this thing from you. You can't
Yep.
just, like, to your point, ask your family members. 'Cause eventually they will say, A, B. You're just going to pick a B. I don't know.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more. How does this platform work? How would authors utilize it? And let's say starting with a cover design or something like that, and then we'll go backwards about even to book concepts, because I think it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, sure. So basically, they're micro surveys. So you ask a single question, you upload a few creative assets or copy, and what we'll do is, as soon as you hit publish or start on that poll, what we call them, and we'll reach out to millions of people, and we're going to pay them to respond to this micro survey. So they're going to answer, A versus B. They're going to give a written explanation why, and then they're also going to give their demographic information. And so all of this happens super fast. So if we're talking about a U.S. general audience, it could be done in as little as 15, 30 minutes.
Hmm.
So just like the coffee shop. Like you can actually go get a coffee, and then by the time you come back, you'll have 50 different people responding to you. And you could target, like you said, you could target people who read nonfiction, or people who are dog owners, or parents, any of these kind of different behavioral type interests. And so then you're actually getting feedback from your target audience around the title or the cover design, or author bio, any of those things.
Yeah. This is really important because there have been really famous books that did terribly, launched by traditional publishers, and when they changed the cover alone
Hmm.
or changed the title of the book, changed everything for that book. It
Yeah.
took off. So this is extremely important for anyone trying to get a book published. Is yes, a designer can be good, but it doesn't mean they understand your target audience. How
Mhm.
could they? How could they totally understand everything about dog walking business, right?
Yeah.
They could know about good design, but I think this is really valuable when you're trying to test, especially if you're testing into a new market. A lot of my authors come, they're like, "Hey, I'm building a book because I'm building a new brand. I want this to be the seminal piece for my brand," and it might be new to them. So they don't have a target audience. They don't have their list to reach
Hmm.
out to. So it's important for them to actually have a place to go. So when they do these sorts of things, when the data comes back, does it give details about their market as well as like who said yes to what? How does it work when they get back the information?
Yeah, so you're going to get this quantitative data first of, A versus B. So maybe it's like 70-30. You're going to get the qualitative written feedback from every individual. You could see the demographic information for every individual. So, maybe their income. You can actually select different things that you want to know about them. And then we'll give a demographic breakdown of the responses on the bottom. So you might say, maybe A won 70-30, but actually females liked B more. And you'll see that in the breakdown.
Hmm.
And so as you run these polls, you could actually request a lot of different demographic information, even if you're not filtering by that, just so that you could see how they break down after the fact.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So a lot of the authors I help, business owners are very familiar with creating an avatar. A lot of
Hmm.
authors necessarily may or may not be if they're not familiar. I always say avatar just means your ideal reader.
Yep.
And if you wrote out your ideal reader, you might know a lot about them, even though they're fictitious, their age, their gender, where they live, if they have children, where they shop. And that's vital information as you're creating the book and writing it. But then being able to reach those actual people to get information is super helpful. So I can even see how this is helpful for testing things like you said, book titles or
Yeah.
even concepts. Tell us how you've seen it been used to help people kind of develop their book concepts between even a slight difference between one another.
Yeah. So let's see. I was kind of pulling up a few different case studies that we had. Um, and the nice thing is that you could just test a written description. So, one way to even test it is actually not even comparing two different things, but to just put out a concept. And so
Hmm.
you could ask for like a 1 to 5 star rating, and ask the, people who have dogs, like, does this book concept sound interesting to you? And you can kind of just write a description of like, well, I'm going to talk about like different ways to train them, and like, whatever it is. And just get
Yeah.
them to kind of riff on it. Like, just like if you were in a coffee shop and you're like, hey, do you have this problem? Would you need a book about it? So that's one
Yeah.
way to kind of test out the concept.
That's great.
And then, of course, you could compare two different written pitches, right? So, like, okay, well, I'm going to do a book or a story, and here's the synopsis. And actually, we see this a lot with fiction. We see a lot more like essentially pitches, right? Like,
Hmm.
here's the basic concept of the story. Here's another one. Like, which one is more appealing to you? And we'll even see people go as far as doing like storyboard, like fat markered sketches of like,
Yeah.
oh, like kind of like, here's what I'm thinking. Like maybe it's a graphic novel, or something like that. So uh, really raw things that I don't think people ever think that they can get feedback on that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because you typically get feedback on more polished things, but you know, drawing something on a napkin, taking a picture of it, and uploading it, like you can do that.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you know what? If you have actual data, and maybe I'll ask more questions about the data in a second. If you're, let's say you're writing a book concept and you've validated it through this method, this
Yeah,
idea of putting out concepts, and you said this one won with females this age,
yeah,
you know, it could help you if if you don't have a big audience to go to a traditional publisher and say, look, I validated this with this much data,
yeah,
to say this
yeah.
is the book concept that's really working, and here's my data. That could really help you sell it, so you don't have to say it's just my social media following, because your
Hmm.
social media following may have nothing to do with your book you're writing. So this could help your data actually in your
That's right.
pitches to potential publishers. So, and the idea of validating title is really important. Let me just give you a few examples.
Yeah.
So we're all familiar with this book, but you'll know it a little differently. Um, Tomorrow's Another Day. You're like, I never heard of that book. What book is that? The original title of the book was Tomorrow's Another Day. The book that we know is called Gone with the Wind.
Hmm.
So that's one. Another one is The Dead Undead. What is that? That's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Nice.
Titles make a huge difference in the success of a book. So
Yeah.
testing it out with something like PickFu is really important. I'm not being paid to say this. I'm just telling you, I've used this and I know that it's really helpful to help bring about things. And you could, even if you have a book out there, people, if you're listening, you're like, my book isn't doing well. It's like, man,
Hmm.
probably you should test it. Maybe test the cover against a new cover and see, hey, the new cover won. Or maybe retitle or relaunch it with a new
Yeah.
title that
Yeah.
you've tested that sells. Because if you put all the effort to write a book, why would you let it burn on down to the ground because you didn't do testing?
Yeah. Because even on the title, the same book could take such different trajectories on like what that initial impression is. And we actually had, I'm pulling up one of those case studies around an author who self-published, and it was about for shorter guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the titles was Amazing Heights, How Short Men Stand Tall and Stand Out. Um, and then the other one was Stand Tall, Stand Out, like more emphasis on that. And then How Short Men Achieve Amazing Heights.
Yeah.
So very similar, but kind of like what the emphasis on, right? And I think
Yeah.
the Amazing Heights tested much better just because I think it was like that more positive thing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, a minor, it would seem like a minor rewording, but I think it can make a huge difference.
I think that's exactly the point. It's like when you're talking authors, one, if you're writing fiction, you think of yourself as an artist. I get that. And you don't
Yeah.
want to have, they don't want to do marketing and do all this other stuff. Well, welcome to the real world. But the other thing is, if you're really an entrepreneur, don't leave this stuff out of your business plan for your book. Your book is your business. So you got to think
Hmm.
about it. And, you can really adjust it. Sometimes sales have increased. Look, if you can get a 33% increase on your sale of your book, wouldn't you do it? Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to know? And I think that's the thing I want people to understand is using a tool that serves authors can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So let me, I had said I wanted to ask a question about the data. So how much data points can you get? Is it a certain number? Like, is there like, hey, you pay more, you get more data? It's like there's levels or like what? I mean, obviously there's so many different variables, but tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more how the data comes together for them.
Yeah, so the model is pretty straightforward. It's pay as you go. We start at $1 per response, so you
Mhm.
can go as low as 15 responses, and for $15, up to 500. It does increase a little bit per as you do targeting and things like that. So if you make it a little bit more complex, like if you want to reach female dog owners who drink tea, that's going to cost a little bit more than $1, and so it'll just scale linearly from there. Um, so pretty straightforward. I would say most people do 50 to 100 when they're kind of like choosing a final
Mhm.
thing. But as they're iterating, they're doing smaller amounts, like 15 to
Yeah.
30 responses, because maybe you're playing with fonts like on your covers or colors or whatever it is, and you just kind of want to get a sense of which way are people liking it. And if you do 15 responses, you get like 10 to 5, 12 to 3, like that's enough data like to be significant, like in a certain direction. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
do 100 responses for that. As you get to your final couple options of like a polished thing, then I would recommend doing more responses.
Yeah. And I want people to know. So let's say you have, oh, I have Facebook. I'll just put on Facebook. Great.
Yep.
Are those really your ideal readers? Um, you could do Facebook ads. I'm not saying you shouldn't,
Yep.
but all you know is if they clicked. You
Yes.
don't know if they're real people. And also, let's say you have thousands of people on your Facebook page. You think that's good. Of those thousands, how many of them meet those ideal criteria? And it probably is down to 15 to 25, 30, like honestly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's much better to get really clear, honest, and yet unbiased because your social media may be biased either towards you or against you. Who knows, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's really helpful. The other thing I wanted to know is when someone's doing this, like they're gathering data, give us maybe even outside of books, if you don't have a book idea, some celebrated success of what happened when someone did try these testing metrics for some sort of product or even a book, if that's possible.
Yeah. one last thing I wanted to add to the Facebook versus comparison, and the biggest insight is actually going to come from the written responses, right? And you're not going to get any of that if you run ads. So
Yeah.
you're going to see that quantitative, A won versus B, but you're not going to know why B lost. And how are you going to improve B if you don't understand that? And that's what you're going to get here, because it's those nuggets of insight where people say like, well, this was offensive to me, or like, try a different color, whatever it is, like that, and you can actually improve. So we see a lot of different case studies. We have customers across the entire spectrum of things. One that's actually relevant to booksellers now, because so much happens on Amazon, is we have a lot of people who sell products on Amazon, and what we see is a minor change in their main image can lead to like a 12% increase in their click-through rate. And you still got to convert them with like a compelling book and things on your book landing page. But I think choosing by the book cover is more true now than ever, because as you're searching on Amazon, you're really just scanning all these different things, right? You're searching for a certain topic, book, and it's really got to stand out, just like a product has to stand out on Amazon. And so there's much more of a visual component to it. And in fact, a lot of times when our e-commerce companies have issues, it's their packaging, and that's essentially
Right.
like what your book cover is, right? So a lot of the same issues. So we see huge increases by making adjustments to the book cover, and that's actually kind of swapping it out. We've got some good case studies around. We had one author actually whose name was Al Podell. He was working with a publisher actually, and he came to us to try to disprove his publisher. Like
Yeah.
he had this. It was a great. It's a very entertaining book. It's called Around the World in 50 Years, and he kind of like went to every country on Earth. And so his original concept for a cover had all of these little pictures, almost like a collage of things, from his travels, which were all dear to him. His publisher, like had a much more muted approach, where there were like stamps from the different countries, still very colorful, but like less scrapbooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he really didn't want to do like this muted approach, so he kept testing it on PickFu on his own dime to try to prove the publisher wrong. Kept losing. He even tried like putting some of his images into like blending it in with like the publisher's design. Still lost. And so finally he's like, okay, I'm going to go with the publisher's design, and
Yeah.
became a New York Times bestseller. Happy with the book now, but
Yeah.
it was really funny because he was really holding on to like that. It was the emotional tie to all these. I took all these pictures and I want them on the
Yeah.
cover of the book, right? And so I'm sure a lot of authors can resonate with that.
Yeah. I have some books coming out here that on our press that I was like, I think this is a PickFu moment because they're certain this is the thing. I just want to, it's not personal. I think they think personal preference matters more than the audience. And I think you have to let that go if you're going to have something that sells and resonates.
Yeah.
Even titles. Sometimes I wrestle them with
Yes.
titles. I'm like, titles is a great place. I say test, or here's the other place if you're listening, book descriptions. So
Mm.
in
Hmm.
Amazon, the way books work, the first thing that stops people in the tracks, besides the cover, which is obvious, that's the first thing, is the
Mm.
title. So cover and title are the first things that stop. If those don't land, they scroll right by. And after that, of course, it's reviews.
Yep.
That's something you can't do the books live, but you could test the concept. That would help know,
Yep.
right? The thing after that is description. So if the description isn't working, that's the hardest thing to test. So
Hmm.
only way we can test it on a book cover in Amazon is to run ads.
Yeah.
And then we're guessing half the time. We're like, okay, the covers are working, they're clicking, they're doing these things. But this is a way to take that guesswork out. Like, let's just say if which description
Yeah.
is more compelling, or however you might choose with PickFu. Like, there's different ways, obviously, you can do that.
Yeah.
But I think this is a really great way to save yourself a lot of money. If you're going to spend $100 on ads in a week, why not just try a PickFu and not waste the money
Yeah.
on ads and have more
Exactly.
data, right? Yeah, that's awesome. So, who are these people that are leaving these reviews or giving you feedback? Like, that's a good question. Like, where do they come from?
Yeah, so we tap into the same consumer panels that Procter and Gamble or Kraft would use when they're running market research as well. The difference is that when large CPGs do it, they have consumer insights teams. They work with market research consultants. They run these very long and expensive studies that are they do a lot of data quality filtering because, as you can imagine, when you're paying people to do stuff, like you're going to get a lot of junk, right? So
Yeah.
we spend an incredible effort to layer on our own audience targeting and data quality on top of those panels, and we kind of stitch them all together to try to curate them into the best people we think that are genuinely responding. And so the nice thing about gathering these qualitative written responses is that we're able to judge how earnestly they're doing the work, right? If they were just clicking, it would be kind of difficult to tell. But because we
Yeah.
require them to write something, we use kind of automated and human curation to make sure that these people are genuinely looking at your different response options.
That's great. It would be really expensive to get that data live. I used to work in design 100 years ago, in the 90s. And in order to do packaging redesign, we would have these focus groups. Like,
Yeah,
these are beer drinkers who drink more than 6 pack a night, 5 days a week. All the different parameters. They sit in the room. We sit in these glass things and eat
yeah,
really nice food and watch them talk about different, which one they pick up, which one they put down, which one they love, why they love it. This is a much more efficient way to have that conversation.
yeah. Yeah,
It
the,
isn't perfect.
the digital equivalent that's just rapid and hopefully, you shouldn't need any expertise on it. And then that's our goal is we're trying to
Yeah.
democratize consumer research so that people who don't have expertise can still get the benefits of consumer insights.
Yeah, which is really important. I think this is the part of authorship that most authors don't want to think about or talk about because they're
Hmm.
terrified everyone's going to hate their book.
Mm.
So they make their book look pretty so they feel good, but it's not really always helpful. Now, yes, I gave those big examples of books that just changed the titles and made a big difference. But I think people need to realize it's a real thing, and you have to accept that consumerism and product development and a book is a product. I say, look, you're selling a widget, you're selling a 16.99 product, and you're trying to make a profit, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, every percentage point counts towards increasing your revenue, even if you have a traditional publisher, right? Like, you can actually do exactly that. Like, test your
Hmm.
theories. If you think this is a better description, test it and then give them the data. Because
Exactly.
oftentimes, I hate to tell you, but if you have a big publisher, or if it's not the big five and you're not James Clear, you're getting a junior level intern just out of college. By the time you get down here, they don't know any more about this than you do. They just got the assignment. So, like, be prepared, be thoughtful, because I think people think, oh, publishers, it's magic. I was like, no, they're running a business on scale. Like, if they publish 100 books, two of them are going to make the money for all of them.
Hmm.
So they're not necessarily, they're hedging their bets on your audience because that's
Yep.
what you're selling. I'm selling, that's, as a publisher, I'm looking for people who have an audience and a message that matters, and that I think they can sell it. Not that I can sell it. That I'm going to do my best to get it to sell as a product, but I want them to sell it to their audience. Well, if
Hmm.
you can do both, then you're very marketable to a publisher or even to your own team. Say, like, this is why this is a good value. This is why we should put our effort or our resources here. It's not just an ego project. I have real data.
Hmm.
What other pieces of information would you give to potential authors that they might consider PickFu for that we haven't talked about?
Let's see. Kind of things that go on the jacket. So, even headshots, like the bios about themselves, I think are super
Yeah.
interesting to test. I mean, we even get dating profiles and LinkedIn profile things being tested. So, you could extend it further than just the book ones. Any of those things, even if you're going to be selling it on your own website, like landing pages, like if you're optimizing things for like a pre-sale, all that kind of stuff. Traditional digital marketers are testing those kinds of things on PickFu all the time.
Yeah.
And just like you said, it's just a product. Like, we're boiling it down to it's a product that you're selling, and all the things that other people who are selling products like should be considered for selling your book.
Yeah. I tell people, look, it's a widget. Don't get so attached to
Yeah,
it. You really got to you bled on the page. I get that part, but now that you're done bleeding,
yeah, you're
bandage
done.
yourself up.
Move on
Which,
and make money.
yeah, you don't want to keep bleeding, and not bleed money and time. So, like, one of the things I would encourage people testing, if they are in the midst of the book writing process, is, yes, test the title, yes, description, all the things we described, but also be prepared to test things that are simpler than you think, which is, um, you might You might test a book notion, like what matters more to you in a topic.
Hmm.
Because I think people assume that because you care about it and know a lot about it, that it's useful to everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest part is realizing that. Here's, I'll pick Pat Flynn. He'll let me pick on him because he's not here. He wanted to write a book. This was 8, 9 years ago. He's like, he knows a lot about marketing, not about online business. He could write about so many topics. He said, I just want to write a book about, everything online. Like, I want to be like the online encyclopedia book
Yeah.
series. And I said, well, Pat, do people read encyclopedias? He's like, oh. Then he wrote a book, which he started to sound like Malcolm Gladwell. I said, why are you writing like this? He's like, well, I want to sound smart. I'm like, well, we like you because you're yourself. So stop doing that. And
Hmm.
then it kept getting smaller and smaller. Like, eventually he wrote a book that he was trying to impress his peers because, like all this SEO and how and when it got down to it, the audience that he needed was the most underserved, and his audience was 70% of the people who listen and follow him never made more than $500 online.
Hmm.
So he was impressing the wrong group of people. The largest audience he had left untapped was these people who just never got off the ground.
Hmm.
So that's why we moved towards this book called Will It Fly, because that's what they were worried about the most.
Interesting.
So this can save you years of rewriting books, friends. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, if you just test the simplest concepts out with a potential audience.
I love
Because
that idea. And even within the book, I think like different chapters, right? Because
yeah,
like you said, like you're going to have like this outline of things that you want to talk about or like specific
yeah,
angles, but like what direction do does my audience want me to take with this? Or,
yeah,
do you want something that's prescriptive? Do you want something that reads like a story? Like there's a lot of different approaches that you can take,
yeah,
or even writing styles, and you could even test those as well.
yeah. I think people will be surprised that there are niches within niches that are underserved.
Hmm.
I'll give you another example, and I can talk about it now because the book's coming out by the time this goes out. Is Ali Abdal? He's a YouTuber, and he has a niche in productivity. Of course, people are still trying to ride the wave of James Clear. I use as an
Yeah.
example. He's an anomaly. I don't think he could repeat this success if he wanted to, of this particular book. So it's still a very interesting niche. But one of the things that he wrote about was that productivity should be fun, which is not what people were saying about productivity.
Hmm.
He's like, productivity is just a part of my life. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, I like having fun. So his method is really about fun. And when he pulled his audience, they're like, they want to know why I actually seem to enjoy my productivity so much or why I'm so productive. And I hate to tell them, it's just, I just have fun doing what I'm doing. And it's not that complex.
Hmm.
His publisher wanted to push back so hard. So we got to be more serious. And I said, Ali, pull your audience and show them the data, what they really want to know. And that's really what happened. He pulled his data and saw that they really just wanted the secret sauce. And his secret, I go, if you try to sell them something else that you're not really using, they're going to figure it out. You
Hmm.
gotta align with your truth, but also just ask them. They'll tell you why they're interested in you and why this matters. Because it's not because they should be more productive. They just want to be more like you.
Hmm.
They see you being, 4 years ago, your YouTube channel had a few thousand subscribers, and now you're making $1 million a month. They want to know what the heck happened.
Yeah.
They want to be like you, and if you're having fun, they're going to want to have fun.
That's great.
So I think all this data is really helpful. I know that it can seem overwhelming if you're a new author or you're just thinking about it. You're thinking, oh my God, I haven't started writing. This seems overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, once you get to the place where you're testing things and you want to know feedback, something like this is really helpful. So, Justin, tell them where to go to get more about PickFu, because I think this is going to be something at least they're going to be interested in checking out wherever they
Yeah.
are in the writing process.
Yeah. So you can go to pickfu.com. So pickfu.com. You can sign up for free. There's a free account. As part of the onboarding, you'll actually get a free mini 5 response poll just so that you could see how it works. But we do have an offer for your audience where they can use coupon code AWL for 50% off their first poll.
Awesome.
And so that'll be a great way for them to try out whether it's their title or their book cover or just the book concept, some kind of idea that's in their head.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Thank you for being so generous. I know people have it. Again, I'm not an affiliate for PickFu. Might change my mind after this. Maybe I will be, but I'm really glad because this is the kind of stuff that helps authors kind of make their decisions, grow their audience, and get confident about their book. That yeah, this is a solid book because people, not
Yeah,
just because people tell me, grandma told me they want to write a book
exactly.
or whatever. But you get real data from real people, and I love that you get quantitative as well as qualitative data, so you can actually apply
Yeah.
it to the iterative process, which is probably more important than
Exactly.
most
It
authors
is
think.
that iterative process. And I love that word that you said, the confidence, because that's the feedback that we get, is that this gives people the confidence to make those decisions, which could be seems really scary, especially if you're alone. And
Yeah,
so maybe it doesn't test well, but you work and you iterate and it eventually it does, then you're going to feel so much more better. You're going to feel so much better, right? About launching the book or writing the book or, self-publishing it, whatever stage you're at.
yeah, absolutely. This has been really great. I hope anyone listening is getting value out of this, and that you check out PickFu and see whether or not it's a good fit for you. And if you do, tell me your story. Tell me
Yeah.
what your data is. I'd love to learn from even listeners about what really works for them. Thanks again, Justin. It's been awesome. It's been really valuable, and I appreciate you giving us your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.